the whole meeting for Tuesday, October 17th is now called to order. Andrea, would you please call the roll?
Good afternoon, everyone. As a reminder to all in attendance, this meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the county's YouTube page. It is now 1:06 p.m. Calling the roll, Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Sweeney is absent at the moment. Mr. Tuma?
Here.
Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schron?
Here.
Ms. Turner?
Here.
Ms. Conwell?
Present.
Ms. Stevens is absent at the moment. Council President Jones?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Andrea, has anyone signed in for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Kareem Henton. Mr. Hinton, is the green light on?
Now it is.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Kareem Hinton of the Jail Coalition. I was just here because I wanted to convey some things that was a takeaway for me when I went to a city council meeting in the city of Euclid. Spoke to some Euclid city councilmen or council persons and spoke to some residents there. And it seems like in many ways we're aligned with each other. They're pretty upset about the fact that over in the city of Euclid, they once had a jail there. The former county executive decided he was going to close that jail up and others, which led to a bit of the crisis we had at the current county jail with overcrowding. And wasn't any decision of theirs, but yet, you know, they suffer certain inconveniences and so forth. But they know that they have been checking the numbers and they know that numbers don't add up. The money that they're spending to house their prisoners or detainees far exceeds what it would cost for them to run their own jail. So they're exploring that. And I'm relaying that to you because if the jail, even though there's an issue of the cost, they're very disenchanted with the fact that there's more of an added expense, there's more of an added inconvenience, and there's more of an added safety risk to their residents because now they're going to be expected, officers are going to be expected to transport people all the way to Garfield. This wasn't the best location, but it wasn't the worst. And it's something that actually, if you're thinking not just about the folks who are on one side of the line, if you're thinking about them, if you're thinking about the detainees, it's more convenient for them, but it's an issue for Euclid residents as well. I'm bringing this up to make this valid point. I ask that before you make these decisions, like you've made the decision to put the cart before the horse, you haven't agreed on how you're going to finance this, yet you purchased that land. If it winds up not being built there, you just bought land. For what? Those ARPA dollars could have been used for something else. But here's the thing. Please engage with the residents of the county as a whole, not just Garfield, because all of the county is going to be paying for this. So I just wanted to convey that message. I believe you have a responsibility to represent your constituents. Your constituents do not only lie in Garfield. Thank you.
That concludes the public comment portion for today's meeting.
All right, thank you, Andrea. At this time, the matters referred to committee will be passed to the chair of our Finance Committee, Councilman Dale Miller, again, to chair our budget hearing process. So I, again, symbolically pass the gavel to you, Councilman Miller.
Thank you very much, President Jones. And this is the second hearing for the 2024 to 25 biennial budget process. Today, the focus is going to be on several key health and human services agencies. And we're going to start with an overview on health and human services from Director Merriman.
Mr. Chair, I would just like the record to reflect that Mr. Sweeney is in attendance.
Good afternoon. My name is David Merriman. I'm the Director of Health and Human Services. And I'm here on behalf of the entire leadership team and the county executive and Chief of Staff, Eric Janis. I'm going to be reviewing a very brief PowerPoint. My intent is to move through this quickly and provide a high-level overview of just some background and context, as well as some current issues under consideration, to really cede the balance of my time to discussion and any questions that you have. I know I'll be followed after that by the different directors that are here today on behalf of Children's Services, Job and Family Services, Senior Services, and Child Support. I do want to acknowledge that the administrator of the Office of Child Support Services unfortunately is ill, and so Jeffrey Bloom will be presenting on Tiffany Dobbins-Brazelton's behalf, and I'll be supporting Jeff. Also want to acknowledge in the room today is Kathy Starks, our fiscal officer. Kathy, if you'll raise your hand. So Kathy is instrumental in leading the budget process for us. I want to just say that Kathy and her team have put in endless hours. They've worked many weekends, and the diligence and the professionalism that they've committed to really presenting a budget that I think is in alignment with the county executive's values and views, but also the expectations of this council is, I don't think it goes without question that this is Kathy's, one of her passions, and she's very competent in the way that she carries out her duties. Also recognizing Arnell Hurt is here on behalf of Client Support Services. So he is part of the administrative team. Not present today is Chris Murray, my assistant director. He apologizes. Chris is actually covering the mental health sprint task force, or the mental health workforce sprint task force that is scheduled at this time. Chris wanted to be here as the assistant director, but he felt that we had to do a divide and conquer. He's staffing that task force and will be present for future meetings. So I'm going to go ahead and get kicked off if I can ask. Oh, I think I can use the clicker. Green button? Okay. So want to just begin with a very brief overview of the Department of Health and Human Services. I understand that's very small, but it is a large department. I want to first recognize this is the largest department in the county, and we serve the most residents of probably any department, possible exception, taxation probably reaches out to more households. But in terms of residents served, we are serving over 500,000 residents per year, and I think it's much likely more than that. Our residents live in every community. They really, our clients live in every community, and our residents are spread throughout the entire geography of the county. We serve residents from birth through death, and we continue to serve their families. And at the end of the day, our services are judged upon our ability to meet residents' needs. And there are times that they fall short, and we need to continue to improve. There are times they exceed expectation, and we have to grow those programs. But at the end of the day, our services are provided by the departments in front of you, the 8 departments, 4 of which you'll hear from today, 4 of which you'll hear from in the next HHS budget presentation. The offices range from 4 staff to over 700. We have multiple offices with over 700 staff. And as an organization, we have over $200 million in contracting, and we probably spend over $120 million in staffing. Much of that is funded by federal reimbursement, and we can talk more about that if there are questions. So our administration is largely made up of the director's office. Again, this is I'm the director of Health and Human Services, but there is an office called the Office of the Director as well. And in that office, besides myself and Chris Murray, sit a number of our support staff. And we have 15 FTEs in the director's office, and services that they provide range from communications and different performance evaluation, as well as some clerical staff and some other shared services. I want to just recognize the value of shared services and the structure that we have. We endeavor to leverage as much federal reimbursement as possible. So we've made this very strong commitment to aligning our staff to meet clients' needs, but to draw federal reimbursement whenever possible. So there will be times that there will be a staff person that is in my budget or in another person's budget, but they may very well be a shared service staff, and they're not just supporting that program or service. They might, in fact, be supporting multiple programs and services. I think there are also times, as you see from the other 2 staff areas listed, DHHS Human Resources and DHHS IT, where we pay for staff in aligned departments where there is technical expertise. Our HR team is embedded with us, but we fund them out of our grants, our programs and services, and they focus on the staff for those programs and services. I think this structure works well for us because it enables the HR staff to develop familiarity with the programs and services as they're doing talent attraction and recruitment, as they're supporting staff through professional development. And at the end of the day, as HR succeeded with programs like their in-person hiring events, they're able to embed, to work with the supervisors to develop this teamwork approach that I think has been very successful in terms of enabling us to fill our vacancies. I think I could say the same for DHHS IT. The IT department has staff that are mostly located in our headquarters, which is the Jane and Hunter building, but they serve all of the programs and services. It's important to recognize DHHS works on the state server and the state of Ohio applications. Most of our programs and services are federally mandated, and with those federal mandates comes the state expectation for administration. And the state provides us data systems and requires us to use those data systems in the way that they're provided to us as a component of a grant. And so our DHHS IT staff are located with us, but they are working in state systems with state of Ohio staff and trying to balance expectations for both local IT, DHHS administration, and the state of Ohio. I find that to be a complex arrangement. Generally speaking, the state resources that were provided meet the minimum needs of our programs and services, and frequently we have to develop additional practice around that to actually fully address the complexity of services in Cuyahoga County. But that's our structure. That's the staff that we have. I just recognize there's about 14 FTEs in human resources and about 43 in IT. So all told, we're about 72 staff are located in DHHS administration. The balance of our budget is largely contracts and then chargeback costs. For contracts, much of the contracts that are funded directly out of our budget are broad initiatives. These range from the Peer Place program that's being provided in Family and Children First Council to help families get the prevention services they need, to also being provided in DSAS to be able to do coordination with various agencies. Tableau is another shared service application where it sits in my office, but the staff that use Tableau are placed throughout the agency in our performance evaluation and innovation office, drawing in data to be able to create visualizations. These contracts enable us to do the business intelligence and analytics that are necessary and necessary to carry out our duties, but ultimately improve our services to be more responsive to the needs of residents. The other element of contracts that are included in our budget are broad initiatives that are focused on the general population or general public's needs. This includes programs like First Year Cleveland, the Poison Control, the AIDS Funding Collaborative. These services can't be tied to one specific agency because they're not tied to a federal grant, but are usually intended to achieve a programmatic impact at the county level. For example, First Year Cleveland's goal is to address infant mortality in Cuyahoga County. The poison control, we fund the poison control hotline that serves our community, and actually it serves the broader northeastern Ohio area. The AIDS Funding Collaborative is another ongoing contract where we, along with the City of Cleveland, area foundations, pool our money to be able to address HIV, the spread of HIV and AIDS services in northeastern Ohio. So those are examples of how DHHS leads broad cross-sector programs and services, and our contract budget is over $9 million, and we do tend to try to draw federal reimbursement on those services whenever possible. The last area that I'd like to speak to in terms of the administration is just the chargebacks. Our services are provided in 2 county buildings, and we have a number of off-site locations, leases, that are contracts for us. The on-site locations are at the Virgil Brown and Jaden and Hunter building. The custodial work that goes into maintaining those buildings, the public works staff that goes into doing any sort of repairs or modifications, And then also the security that is necessary to keep those buildings safe, whether those are public service officers or PSOs or their deputies at DCFS. Those are all charged back to our agency, and then we do draw federal reimbursement for those. Those chargebacks do represent a pretty significant budget, over $500,000. Actually, I think the security is even higher. But we understand that although those are not part of the DHHS team, because they report to either the sheriff or they report to Public Works, they are teammates of ours. They're absolutely essential to the work we do. The relationships we establish with the PSOs and with the Public Works and custodial staff, I think, are very high quality. And generally, those staff are enabling us to do our services. And whether that's, helping to manage residents coming to Virgil Brown to dispute a decision, or children that are awaiting a placement in the Janet Hunter building, we're all in this together. And I just need to acknowledge that those staff have embraced that spirit of teamwork, and they are part of our response to the needs of adults walking through our doors or kids awaiting placement. And I appreciate them, and I'm grateful for the sheriff and Public Works director for continuing to make it a priority to have high-quality staff placed with us. I'd like to move to, I think, my last content slide. I want to share just a little bit of information about some strategic considerations. I thought it important to present this because these are very significant opportunities and challenges, and they are not included in our budget per se. And I thought it important to just recognize them. The first, I think, speaks for itself. The Child Wellness Campus has become one of the top priorities of this administration. I'll tell you, it's my top priority. I think getting kids out of the Janet Hunter building and getting them to the placements that they deserve is the top priority for DHHS. We did release a procurement. We are still in review of it, and so I can't go into detail as to where we stand with that procurement. But what I can say is we got 4 proposals in. They ranged in value and scale, and we're very excited. We are meeting with providers in the next week. We'll start negotiations, and our hope is that we're gonna move through those negotiations quickly, and I would like to have a contract before this council before the end of the year. So our hope is to move that process as quickly as possible. I don't believe services will be provided this year, but it's possible. This will be something that we'll have to account for, and I understand we'll be back in front of council to present, again, either this year or next year, with most likely the services that really starting in earnest next year. The next item is the collective bargaining agreements. We are in a negotiation right now, so I don't want to speak about any specific union or any of the specific relationships. I just want to acknowledge that we are in collective bargaining negotiations, and we will be for the balance of this year and into next year. And I don't want to make any assumptions that we'll see adjustments, but I think it's possible, and I thought it important for this group to know that. Generally speaking, our contracts do tend to drive much of the contracts around the county, given the size of our workforce. So that's something we're well aware of. I also have to point out the fact that if in fact there were any sort of adjustments in the contracts, we also would then need to look at the salaries of our supervisor staff. I'm naturally concerned about that. I am loath to support compression or equity, and I think the county is well aware of this as an issue. Our supervisors have a very difficult job. I can't say that enough. I can't thank them enough, whether they're managing social service workers or support officers or eligibility specialists. They just have a difficult job. Many of them have come from those positions. In some ways, they've given up opportunities for overtime and other resources to be a supervisor and to be responsible for teams of staff. And they do a fabulous job. And I believe we should be investing in them. And, so it's something I'm watching. It's something I'm keeping an eye on. We talk with them regularly, and we'll continue to make it a priority. I think the last thing that I'd point out is I continue to have concerns about the impact of inflation on our service environment. The inflation that hit during COVID maybe has balanced out a little bit. I understand that, although I'm not an economist. But I hear from our providers every single week. And whether we're talking homeless providers, whether we're talking early childhood education or UPK providers, or child welfare residential providers, just to name 3, they're all talking about that largely our contracts are tied to 2019 figures, 2019 budgets. We are not in the business environment that existed in 2019. The cost of utilities, the cost of staffing, the cost of insurance have all increased, and yet our funding is largely fairly flat. And we make difficult decisions. We will continue to make difficult decisions to address the needs of our providers. That's not really doing them justice. They're our partners. They're the ones that are in the community that are serving residents, whether they're serving them at Harvard Community Service Center or the Westside Catholic Center or Murtis Taylor, or whether they're serving them at Norma Hare or at Belfair. They are our partners. We are funding them to serve our clients, and we have to be aware of their needs. And that has not really been addressed in this budget, so it's something we'll continue to look at. We're prepared to make tough decisions to meet their needs, but our resources are what they are, and we understand that for us to make an adjustment, generally speaking, we're doing exactly that, making a tough decision. So that was my last slide, and I'm happy to open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Director. And as Chair of HHS, to Ms. Conwell, if you have any questions and you're ready to go, I'm going to give you the first shot.
Me and David just met an hour ago, so I'm good.
Who else has questions? Councilman Gallagher and then Sweeney.
Hey, Dave. On the Child Wellness Campus, has money been put aside? I didn't see any.
To the councilman through the chair, we have money right now to fund board and care services. And that's what this is going to be. This is going to be yet another type of foster residential group home service. And some of what we're looking at, Councilman, is can we use our existing dollars? How much additional federal reimbursement can we draw? And also, can we get some additional dollars out of Alliance Systems? We have not added additional money to the DCFS budget to fund this service yet because we're in negotiations and we don't know the cost yet. There will be a cost. We haven't identified how much it will be yet because we haven't moved through the negotiations.
Because when I see campus, I see buildings or a building. Not even there yet?
So we have multiple provider relationships. I would say right now we work as a network. We have relationships all over the county. They're dispersed. And in some ways, we want that diffusion so that we're not totally relying on one provider. But at the same time, co-location is beneficial. And I think that's why we're pursuing this vision. We've talked to the state. We've talked to our aligned public systems. We all understand that serving a kid in Jane and Hunter by meeting their needs there has no cost associated with it because we haven't placed them. If we do a good job of placing every single kid, there will be new costs associated. We don't know if we can do that within our current budget or we'll need to come back to ask for more dollars.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, it's always nice to see you. This is more of a comment, and every time I see you, the word impressive comes. You keep it always so professional. You have a lot on your plate, very heavy stuff, but you just keep working and working. So all this is a shout out, but it's something that I wanted to share to everybody in the viewing audience. Keep up the good work. I look forward to going over your budget with my council colleagues.
Thank you. And thank you to the Councilman Gallagher as well for his question.
So, Director, to follow up on Councilman Gallagher's question, I understand that there's going to be capital costs as well as operating costs as far as the Wellness Center is concerned. And my question is what's going to be the funding source for the capital costs?
Councilman, thank you for the questions. We don't know that to be a fact yet. I think we're assuming there will be capital costs based upon changes that could be needed for some of the space. This will be a part of our negotiations. The dollars that we have going into that process are levy dollars. Levy dollars cannot be used for capital, and we will say that explicitly. So any provider that we move forward out of that procurement will have to show us a funding plan for capital costs. I do understand that they could have their own dollars. They could have a strategic plan to use some of the revenue that they generate from us. That's for them to figure out. They will understand from us a levy dollar cannot be used for capital costs.
Okay. And Director, my second question is I know that we have a number of other contracts in place with outside agencies attempting to deal with the youth at J. Edna Hunter. And my question is whether the establishment of the Wellness Center is going to replace any of those other contracts, or is it going to be in addition to them?
Thank you for the question. It could. So I don't want to get too far ahead because we haven't completed negotiations, and so that's my caveat. But I just would also acknowledge that there are two separate populations that we track through this entire process. The group that is the greatest concern for us, that is the height of our focus, are those 12 to 18, in some cases 20, 21-year-olds that are stuck in our building awaiting placement. I think the campus will largely be designed to meet their needs. And that's a population that I think is usually multi-system. They're involved with us in the juvenile court and maybe Adams and maybe DD, Alcohol and Drug and Mental Health Services, or the Board of Developmental Disabilities. And so this campus will largely address their needs because right now we lack the resources to do that. But that doesn't say there aren't needs for younger residents and children that are younger than 12, or sibling sets where there could be a 8, a 9, and a 15-year-old. So I don't want to preclude that we'll continue some of those contract relationships to be able to serve young children or to be able to serve sibling sets. That's something we'll have to validate in the negotiations. It's especially important for us to keep sibling sets together. You know, these kids have gone through horrible trauma, generally at the hands of a family member, but not always. The worst thing we could do is be splitting them up because we can't find a placement for them. So we have to have some flexibility. We have to have some redundancy of services to meet the individual needs of families.
Thank you. Other questions for the director? Councilwoman Turner.
Thank you. Through the chair, Director, when you were talking about the collective bargaining agreements, will there be any consideration for layoffs, consolidations, or not filling positions at all?
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman. I've had no conversations about layoffs. That's not something I could even envision personally. And in fact, our goal is to hire as many staff as we're budgeted for to provide our services. In terms of consolidations, at this point, again, that's not something we're talking about, especially in relation to the collective bargaining agreements. Those are long-standing, strong relationships that we have with those different unions. And our practices, I think, is strong in that we work with them if we have to make any adjustments. So I just would say I'm part of no planning and no discussion to consider any of those issues.
Okay, and I'm still learning, so just one more question. When you use the words compression and equity, can you give me a little background? Yes.
Sure. I think the concern that is, it's been well established that if you have a unit and there's a supervisor and direct service staff, is the supervisor making sufficiently higher income or wage than the direct service staff to justify that change of role, and then additional responsibilities, generally additional education, and the work that goes along with it. And I think when we see that the difference between the direct service staff or the staff in general and their supervisor is negligent, or not negligent, but is de minimis, there's you have compression because in essence they're all making the same, and yet someone has responsibility and accountability for the overall function. And so that generally is the compression that we naturally worry about, and we're doing some analysis and assessment to ensure that that's not occurring. But we've heard from our staff at times that, you know, if there's a new supervisor and they have a veteran staff and that staff person's working overtime, there's a good chance that they could be making more than their supervisor. And when that's happening, you know, I think a lot of staff would have to ask the question, why would I be a supervisor? And yet I think those direct service supervisors, they're the most critical positions next to the direct service staff, because they're helping to bring people on. They're making sure they're following along with policy. So caring for that group is a priority for us. In terms of equity issues, I think we continue to watch this to make sure that, you know, if somebody is getting hired right now, are we paying them more than someone who's been around for 10 years? Or if we're hiring someone who is, you know, just maybe coming in with a skill set, but maybe they don't have the same education as someone that's been around longer. Are we paying someone more than someone else that's doing the same job, and is there a reason for that? And we should have the ability to assess if there's legitimate differences in skills and experience, and there is a justification for two different wages, okay. But if there isn't, why is one person making more than another? And what's our process to address that?
Okay, Thank you. I did understand it correctly, and I'm glad to hear that this is a priority for you. This group is. I know that I had heard some concerns in this space, so I am ecstatic that this is on your radar as a priority. Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the record, Councilwoman Simon is now present, and President Jones now has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And forgive me, Dave, if you've already answered this question, because I only caught the tail end of your comments. But again, back to the Jane Edna Hunter facility and the ultimate solution, are there dollars budgeted for the Metzenbaum facility or anything beyond that? And do you have any money, even if not the final dollar amount?
Councilman, thank you for your question. I think what I would say is we do have money that has been proposed to council to make some changes to the Metzenbaum facilities structure. So that is in this year's budget. I think that is still making its way through the legislative process. So to answer that question, yes, dollars have been budgeted, but not for the ongoing services.
Do you know what the dollar amount is?
I don't want to misspeak. I'm sure we
Okay.
can have it. I don't have it in front of me, but I can get that for you.
Okay.
But in terms of ongoing operations, no, we've not added any dollars. In essence, we have the resources we have right now. And if Metzenbaum were open tomorrow, we'd have a decision to make. Would it be better for a youth to spend a night in Metzenbaum or better to spend the night in Jane and Hunter? And, or what would it take to have it be a better environment? And how long would that have to happen? So I think that's a part of the assessment that we're doing, but I don't know that there needs to be any additional cost associated with that.
I think I heard you say you're still assessing whether Metzenbaum is the final solution or if there's more.
That's right. And I'm not thinking in a binary way, it's not this or that. I think we have to be kind of cognizant of this is the top issue of DHHS. These kids sleeping in the building awaiting placement because of the placement crisis is driving so much of our policy right now that we're preparing to respond. And if that means we do something in the short term and it has some costs associated, but it's better than what we're doing right now, maybe we do it for a little while. And we prepare a better solution to follow. But maybe that better solution isn't the ultimate solution that I think you're envisioning and you, Councilman, you've asked for 2 years now. And so we're talking to the state, we're talking to Adams Board, we're talking to DD and the juvenile court. What does our system need to look like? What services do we need to have that we don't have right now? Because that's why we're experiencing this. How do we develop those services? And then how do we sustain them where all the responsibility is not on the county?
Thank you.
Director, to follow up on the President's question, is the Metzenbaum Center one of the sites being considered for the Wellness Center, or is this a different process?
So the RFP that we released, and again, I just want to be mindful of we're still in review and I don't want to go too far on it. The RFP laid out 3 options for the public to consider. We opened up the Metzenbaum Center as a site that an organization could come and staff on our behalf. We told the public that we may staff the Metzenbaum Center ourselves. So if we don't get a proposal that we like, maybe we'll do it. The third option is we said to the community, if you have a site that's better than the Metzenbaum Center, maybe it's already ready, maybe it's been mothballed for some reason, workforce or whatever, you can propose that. So I can tell you the 4 proposals that came in fell within those 3 options. And I don't want to get ahead of negotiations and share where we're going to go and how we're going to go. But I can say that, Metzenbaum is still an option for us, as is, the option of looking at an outside location.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for the Director? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're now going to move to the Division of Children and Family Services, and I'm going to call forward Director Jacqueline Fletcher. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Jacqueline Fletcher, Director, DCFS, Division of Children and Family Services. I will start briefly with a very brief overview of the division, the department, and then I will go to the slides. But briefly, the mission of Children and Family Services is to assure that children at risk of abuse and neglect are protected and nurtured within the family and with the support of the community as we strive to end the overrepresentation of people of color in the child welfare system. This budget reflects the goals of a system that's moving towards innovation and transformative child protection services and support. We remain steadfast with our efforts to strengthen families with targeted investments in prevention and kinship care and expanded resources to address the trauma exposure that many of our kids are experiencing, as well as improve their well-being outcomes. When children are unsafe in the care of their parents or guardians and the court orders them into the division's custody, we find child victims a safe, permanent option with their kin or in a family foster home. We place or work to safely reunite families, and if that's not possible, we find a permanent family or guardian for that child or children. And we do this every day. So in reviewing, let me see if I can go here. So reviewing some of our highlights, I wanted to really point out that we have really worked really hard to attract and retain a qualified workforce. And we're seeing some really good improvement here. So DCFS is budgeted for 840 positions, of which 140 are within our shared supportive services. And our priority for the year has been really partnering to host, at least 6 open house events, as well as bringing in 6 new worker classes. And so from this slide, you can see, we're currently experiencing a 17% vacancy rate for the division, and those are DCFS-specific positions. And so when we examined the data between August 2022 to the end of July 2023, we hired 145 child protection specialists, and to date, we've retained 69% or 99 of those workers. I applaud the work that our team is doing because I think that's awesome, 69% retention. So we'll continue to work on that. And then when we look at, I wanted to also share some metrics around, just the impact and volume of the work we do.
So, Director.
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt just for a moment to note that Vice President Stevens is now present. Thank you.
Thank you. So looking at some of the metrics related to our volume and impact, just wanted to point out that we received over 40,000 calls into our 24/7 Kids hotline, with over 11,000 of those being screened in for some type of investigation, and secured over 3,000 placements for children. In terms of our custody numbers, this is really, really nice to see. We've seen a nearly 10% decrease in the number of kids coming into care over this past year. So steadily declining, which is great. And with this budget, we've determined not to make any significant proposals to eliminate any of our broad range of existing programming and or services. And those range from our family-centered support services to our out-of-home care treatment and placement options for kids. Our largest program-related expenditure continue to be those targeting kids in the foster care continuum. And this includes kids in kinship care, treatment foster homes, and a small number of youth in congregate care. That's like residential or group homes. So funding for our out-of-home care supports are expected to remain at that level. I'm just going to echo a little bit later what David was saying, but to date, I believe we've added over 80 providers to our master contract to serve this population of youth in out-of-home care. So our, the ongoing national phenomena we're all experiencing with the lack of mental health, behavioral health treatment for our young people continue to be a challenge. It's impacting everybody across the state. I believe the state, I'll digress real quick, I believe the state did some analysis last year, and from July 1 to June 30th of 22, almost 400 kids spent one night in a JFS office. That's across the state. So we're all continuing to, grapple with this national issue, but, we're working towards that goal that no kid, not one kid, spends one night in an office. And again, I believe David spoke a little bit about this, but I just want to echo some of those key challenges. Again, is, those provider rates David spoke a little bit about. We want to continue to pay attention to that and the inflation. Any ongoing efforts to expand our capacity. I think there was a question about the wellness campus, but I do think if we can continue to look at ways to incentivize our providers to step kids down quickly, safely, then that frees up more opportunity for other kids to go in if they need that level of care. But right now, the incentive is not there. So we want to take a really strong look at how we're situated in the division, not trying to eliminate any providers from our continuum because we know they're doing a really great job. We just want to make sure that they're getting those incentives to step kids back into those home-like environments as quickly as we can get them back home and safely to do that. So I also added on here employee morale because I think that's something that we have to continue to focus on, is improving that morale of our workforce. They're tirelessly doing this every single day, seeing and hearing some of the most sad and traumatic stories, and I just want to make sure we're keeping the morale in front of all of us. Targeted investments is where we continue to invest upstream, looking at prevention, efforts to prevent kids from being separated where possible, seeking input from our community. We have to do this with the input of our community, various organizations that we partner with, youth and families with lived experience. I want to hear from everybody. And it is also our goal to capitalize on targeted investments to, like I said, support our staff and to maintain and expand on the practice improvements we're seeing. So as I wrap up, I just hope you guys don't mind me maybe echoing a little bit again what David said, but I do want to take a moment to thank our law enforcement partners in the work that we're doing. They're doing an amazing job. I don't know if any of you have seen the visor cards that were developed with the memoranda of understanding we have with all of our law enforcement partners, but I've asked the team to do some analysis on kids being dropped off at the agency by way of a law enforcement officer. And I can tell you, from October of last year to October this year, we've seen a 50% decrease in the number of kids being dropped off at Jane Edna by law enforcement. So they're doing a bang-up job, and I just wanted to call them out and acknowledge the work that they're doing. I also want to acknowledge and thank our emergency child care providers, our foster care networks, our foster families, our kinship caregivers. They continue to serve and protect and care for some of our most vulnerable citizens. So I just wanted to shout out and call out those partners in this work, and that's it. Thank you, and I will take any questions if there be any.
Any questions or comments from the committee? So Ms. Simon is first.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate what the stats show us, the trends. What, if anything, is in your budget to address the children in foster, in our custody, having the ability to attend events? And I've been asking about this. So if you can just extrapolate on that a little bit.
To the councilwoman through the chair, yes, definitely. We provide per diem rates for all of our caregivers, from kinship caregivers on through our network providers. And for the most part, it's baked into the rates that kids can access those normalized arts and craft activities, just normal sports and things like that. But if there are specialized events and services that they want to participate in, we can certainly fund those opportunities as well. We typically get a request for summer camp. We pay for that. They don't have to reach into their per diem to pay for summer camps and things like that. So we offset the cost for that, but we would be welcome to any other opportunities to fund those, again, normal activities for any kid that's placed out of home.
Yeah, I appreciate that. We'll be getting together on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Director, regarding the kinship care, is the state still providing assistance for kinship care, or are we doing it all ourselves? Could you kind of give me the whole picture of what the state does and what we do and what the kinship support combined looks like?
So it's my understanding that, the state is kicking in per diem reimbursement for kinship caregivers for 6 months of that placement. So the first 6 months, the state is allocating some funds to paying our kin and relatives. What we've determined to do at the county level is once those dollars end, we kick in with our extended what we call KSP payments, so kinship support payments. So we want to make sure that our relatives who are, again, many of them are also struggling with some finances at times, and we show up at their door with 2, 3, 4 kids, and we say, here you go, can you do this? So we want to make sure that we are supporting them with some monetary support as well. So we continue that payment as long as that young person is placed with their kin or relative.
So do we continue it at the same rate that the state provided?
And I don't believe it's the exact same rate. It may be a few cents below the state rate, but I can get that number for you just to confirm the actual rates as of today.
And so we don't provide any for the first 6 months, but then after the 6 months, then we pick up to fill in for what the state is no longer providing. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, is we're picking up after that 6-month time frame that the state is only allotted for 6 months of payment.
Other questions for the director? Council President Jones.
Thank you, Director Fletcher. My question revolves around the community engagement or partnership opportunities you have or not have with our juvenile justice center. Maybe you can speak to it just in general. Obviously, we remove kids for abuse and neglect, and not many of them, they don't all have records or have impact, connection with the criminal justice system, but obviously some do. So there's a tremendous overlap, if it's not a perfect overlap from the justice center's perspective, juvenile justice center's perspective. What dollars are budgeted for that type of engagement, if any?
Engagement with our juvenile. Thank you for the question. When I first came to county, I'll just start briefly with, one of my roles was to be a liaison between the county and our juvenile justice portion of our work. And, so I've been partnering with our justice partners since I came to county maybe 17 years ago, and we continue this work together. I will tell you, the population that we're seeing that, again, there's several populations, but the population that we've been talking about for some time in terms of kids experiencing delays in placement are truly these complex kid needs. And oftentimes, again, we've looked at some analysis, these kids are multi-system involved. Oftentimes, they're diverted from our justice systems to child welfare. Let's say a parent doesn't show up for court, and they don't have an adequate caregiver to send that young person home to. We partner with them, we'll get involved. So we've been having conversations about, one, how do we support the diversionary opportunities that they're providing at their level? And then if we need to step in, again, we know any type of removal, the trauma of that is undoable, for lack of better words. So I can't undo the trauma of removing a kid. So we want to do everything we can to partner on the front end to make sure those kids are safe in their homes and that they have the resources in the community. I will also tell you that I've endeavored to begin going out to our communities, hosting community conversations and in partnership with our local alcohol and drug board, our Board of DD, our juvenile justice partners, our community collaboratives who's hosting these conversations, and residents who are coming out, we're having these conversations about how do we better partner together. And I'll tell you, our community are having some really good thoughts and ideas on how we can do this a little bit better. But I hope that answers the question. We're working tirelessly to be better at teaming on these kids, because again, these are all of our kids. It's just not one or the other, it's all of our kids. So trying to do better at not just saying, this is your kid, but how do we all better serve these kids and families? So we're working on it, but we're certainly not there yet.
Jackie, are there any dollars dedicated towards that partnership, even as it grows and develops? Or is that even, are there any dollars? I'll just leave it at that.
Well, I will tell you, we did endeavor to, bring them on, all of our child serving system partners. As you may recall, we talked and we partnered on the emergency child care contract with our T-Suites contract. So that is a collaborative effort of our child serving system partners. And so we continue to share data and analytics around, the kids that we're serving, how many of these kiddos that we're serving are multi-system involved. So we're looking at the data first to be able to drill down a little bit, like, specifically which of the kids really have these layered issues that are really complex. And then we can start from there. But we did partner on that T-Suites contract. So we're working from there and beyond. And again, I know they're providing a ton of diversion services for kids through their different budgeted options, but anywhere we can support that, I want to be a partner. And anytime we're talking about kids, I want to be a partner.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To the director, we're going to go back to your last point. So with the kinship connection, what role does the county play once the child is connected with kinship?
Once the child is connected with a kinship caregiver, again, we've pulled together a kinship unit. So we have a team of staff, first and foremost, helping to assess those homes. We have to make sure the homes are safe for the kiddos to go in. And so we have a team of folks going out day and night doing the assessments. And then we also have another team that's helping to provide the support services. So if a kid is placed, then we're providing some linkages to resources, making sure they have awareness and knowledge of what benefits they should be able to draw down, anything within their current community, connecting them with our collaboratives. Our local collaboratives would know what's in that neighborhood that resident lives in, and so connecting them with those mental health services or schooling, whatever it is that they need. So we do have a dedicated resource team at DCFS doing a lot of that support for our direct service workers. And then they're, again, working with our kinship caregivers to make sure they have everything that they need. We certainly want to invest a little bit more in that unit because right now I have a small team. And so if I can, sort of get in and assess where they have some critical needs and then build from there. Because that's something, if you look at our flash report, I believe we're at 30%, a little over 30% of our kids are placed with kinship caregivers. We need to increase that number. Anytime a kid is coming in, we know placing them with a kin or relative person, somebody that young person is familiar with, is better for them. It reduces the trauma. So I need to increase that placement number. And I can't do that without having some dedicated staff to help navigate those waters.
In the I think it was the last budget cycle or the last levy increase, I was one of the proponents that proposed that we had a kinship program here at the county, that we move that forward. So I guess what I'm looking for, are we still looking for, once a child is placed in kinship, I know they don't have permanent custody, are the county's role, are we looking for a permanent placement for that kid still, or
So we have to work concurrent. Thank you for the question. We have to work concurrent plans. Again, permanency is the goal, timely permanency. We know that oftentimes we're hearing from Ken that that's not something that they want to rush into, and having, that parent's rights terminated and then them taking legal custody of a young person. So we walk them through that, letting them know all of those options. But we do want to make sure from the beginning that they understand, and anyone understands, permanency is the goal. If we're removing, we owe it to that child. And so we're continuing to educate them on all of the options that are before them. And I can send you guys over, if you're interested, just a general grid that we've been creating to kind of highlight kinship care, agency foster care, network foster homes, kind of what the differences are, and then what are the specific benefits that come with each placement option.
Has the rates increased for kinship care versus foster care payments?
Versus foster care. The kinship care payments, and I don't have it in front of me, but I can get it to you. I believe they've been the same from the start in terms of when we initially kicked off our kinship or extended kinship payments, but I can verify that and get that to you.
Okay, and I just wanted to make a statement that this director, I hope she never loses her energy and compassion to work diligently with the kids. It has been a breath of fresh air for me, even though she and her team has thought of some different pilots or whatever, or things to try. If they fail, she's still on board trying to come up with some new ones. So that's what we need by team partnership. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Director Kevin Gowan, Job and Family Services. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to present today. I am Kevin Gowan, Director of Job and Family Services for Cuyahoga County. I have a brief PowerPoint to go over some high points from the budget for 2024-2025. So Job and Family Services is funded through federal, state, and levy money. The bulk of our funding does come from the federal and state sources, and the levy money is part of what's deemed the mandated share by the Ohio Administrative Code. We use this funding to administer essentially federal benefit programs. These are SNAP, which are formerly known as food assistance or food stamps, Medicaid, and then the TANF programs, which include cash assistance, child care assistance, and our prevention retention contingency program, which addresses emergent needs. So respected challenges going into 2024, still quite frankly coming out of pandemic conditions, and by saying that, I mean there were a significant number of rule changes that occurred during the pandemic that have since been rolled back. Starting with SNAP, the volume of work around SNAP has increased significantly, likely doubled since July of 2022, when they began introducing more administrative burdens back into the program. Is a sort of touch point on that. While SNAP accounts for roughly half the population from Medicaid, it requires twice the volume of work when it comes down to the administrative work involved with the SNAP program. New in 2024, and really starting in October of this year, just starting this month, they have also, at the federal level, expanded the work required population for SNAP. This refers to the ABODs, and the ABOD stands for able-bodied adults without dependents. They are SNAP eligible, but they are work required. Previously, anyone who was up to the age 50 was work required. They are expanding that so that by the end of 25, it will be anyone up to the age of 54. We're estimating, working with the state and locally, that'll be at least another 5,000 individuals who will be work required in Cuyahoga County on the SNAP program. If they don't meet those work requirements, they're only eligible for 3 months of SNAP. With regards to Medicaid, the big issue for us in 2024 is we continue the unwinding. You may or may not be aware of that term, but Medicaid, the Medicaid program during the pandemic from March of 2020 through March of 2023 had a freeze on all closures with very few exceptions. This meant that anybody who was eligible for Medicaid, whether they were on prior to the pandemic or became eligible during the pandemic, could not be removed from the program regardless of their income or other circumstances. They could only be removed if they asked to be removed, if they moved out of the state of Ohio, or if they passed away. What that meant was during 2020 through 2023, we saw a significant expansion in the Medicaid population in Ohio and in Cuyahoga County. In Cuyahoga County, we saw an increase of roughly 80,000 residents. We went from roughly 380,000 people on the Medicaid rolls to 465,000 people by the end of March of 23.
Could you give me those numbers again? We went from...
It was 380,000 prior to the pandemic beginning, give or take, I'm rounding a little bit. And it was 465,000 by the end of March of 23. Since that point, we are now required by the Fed and by the state government, the state Ohio Department of Medicaid, to review every case in our caseload. We're doing it over this 12-month period. Roughly 5,000 people every month are being removed from the rolls. And we're reviewing anywhere from 20,000 to 32,000, depending on the month, of our active caseload. Some of that has been made easier by or a significant number of that has been made easier by automation. But so far, about 32,000, 33,000 people have dropped off the Medicaid rolls since April of this year. So we're continuing to see that, and I expect the impact of that to be felt beyond April of 24, because as people get removed, some people reapply, and there is a 90-day reinstatement period after you're notified that you've been removed. And much like Jackie referenced during her presentation, probably our biggest challenge is staffing. We continue to have staffing issues, especially with the caseworker classification. We have currently 64 vacancies in the caseworker position. What our biggest concern as of late is the recruitment efforts that we've made are not having anywhere near the results they have had in the past prior to the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, when we posted for a position, for this position, we would see, with a good posting, 400 applications. We're lucky to see 150 nowadays. This is something that's reflected nationwide. We do meet with some regional urban jurisdictions who administer these programs, but we're seeing maybe 150. And of those, we are not seeing as many people really accept the offers. By way of example, the most recent class of new hires that began on August 28th, we made 40 offers, 30 people accepted. 26 showed up on the first day of training, and we've since lost 2 people in the first month and a half. This is not an anomaly. We've been seeing this sort of trend over the past 2 years. So staffing continues to be a high concern for us. Some things that we're doing differently, some new things we're introducing in 2024, 25. The first one, we are piloting this now, and that's community workers. We've partnered with several community partners to have rotating staff at their facilities to assist people with access to services, primarily Medicaid and SNAP. Right now, we have 2 workers on 3 rotating days across 3 different centers to try and offer some more in-person service. The idea being going out into the community rather than making people come to us, to partner with those agencies, those largely nonprofits who are out there, who are really dealing with the same population and helping the same population that we are, and provide a more friendly face to the service. We're hoping that it's successful. Success for us, loosely defined right now, is if I have 2 people in a work site, if I see 20 per day, 20 customers coming in, that's a good use of their time. and beneficial to both the clients, the community partners, and to the agency as a whole. We'll continue to monitor that. It's been going on for 5 weeks now. And we're excited by initial successes, and we hope that that continues to grow. And if it is successful, we'll look at expanding to other partners. We also have on the calendar for 2024-25 SNAP E&T redesign. SNAP E&T refers to the SNAP, or Food Stamp Employment and Training Program. The Ohio legislature has mandated that the Ohio Department of Job and Family Service look at the employment and training program and see that it can be and try and make it so that it is more employer friendly, to align it with employers across the state so that those people who can avail themselves of SNAP employment and training services are actually funneling into the employer community and really providing what the employer community wants to see. This is a statewide initiative. It's not county specific. We are at the table talking about it, and they are engaging with multiple government partners and with the employer community. So there may be big changes coming to the program in terms of how it's designed. We will see in the coming months. And finally, improved automation. Over the past year, it's clear just from the volume of work that we receive, we need to improve our automation, looking at document imaging and improving the process there, really making it more efficient and speeding it up, and looking at ways to further improve our contact center in terms of call routing and automated call routing, and potentially reaching out to clients through automated text messaging. Some of that already occurs. We'd like to see that improved. I believe I'm at the end. A brief summary for myself. Any questions?
Thank you very much, Director, and Ms. Conwell is first.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair to Director Gowan, you spoke about the eligibility specialist positions that were given some priorities, and I think you've had some few hires in that because it impacts the call center. Are there any other positions needed in terms of, without the eligibility, any supervisor positions or any positions of that nature besides the eligibility?
So what we found is, first off, we did add, at the second half of this year, we did add 40 FTEs in the caseworker positions, but we also not simply going to add 40 caseworker positions without the supervisory support. So those were added as well. Our supervisors generally come from the caseworker staff. And so while I'm happy to see those people be promoted, their positions actually become harder to backfill as we fill those supervisor positions. So I don't have concerns in the number of FTEs, but as we fill them, the backfilling is the hardest part, is getting those caseworker positions filled.
Okay, and the backfill is filled with who?
The eligibility specialists. Yes,
Okay.
yes, sorry.
Just because my concern is the overtime. Is the overtime coming down? We did amend the budget and allowed for some overtime for those eligibility specialists. So I'm just wondering where are we at with that?
In terms of managing the overtime, so the overtime money is available based really on vacancies. So as we have vacancies, it both creates the need for overtime and provides the funding for it.
But how are we controlling that? Because at one time we were sending it, people were working from home to get those calls managed and under wraps. So I know some overtime is needed, but I think we had given some additional money for some additional overtime dollars.
So somebody who came in from, and if I'm not speaking directly to what you're asking, please redirect me. We did get money from the state because of the unwinding efforts that were out there and the changes. Most of the counties felt themselves under a big push. And so the state offices of both Medicaid and Job and Family Services who administer the SNAP program or supervise the SNAP program sent us additional funding for overtime efforts. So that is how that money came in addition to any vacancies, any surplus funding that's created by the vacancies. In terms of how we manage the overtime, we're looking not so much at the calls, we're looking at the volume of work that's in front of us. So by way of example, right now we have roughly 5,600 pending SNAP applications. That's high. That doesn't mean that we're necessarily behind in processing those applications. It's just that we've been receiving an excess number of applications. And so when we see that, we know that we need overtime, and then we assign overtime to address that. We may do it to address the Medicaid renewals that are coming in as a result of unwinding. And we prioritize through our case management system what each individual team is going to be working on during overtime. There are times that we do overtime to clear the queues, as we say, because the contact center, if we hung up the phones every day at 4, we wouldn't get to a significant number of people. Our call workers are often on the line well past 4 o'clock, well past 5 o'clock, quite frankly. But the managed overtime is really to address the backlog of cases. I won't say backlog, the pending applications that are out there, thus to avoid the phone call at some level.
Is the state still providing funding? Because this was an initiative from them for us to reapply.
So in terms of overtime efforts, the state's been providing funding this year. I expect them to continue to do so next year.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure that. The 24-25 initiative, is this the sheet that you had just had on the screen? Is there a cost for any of these initiatives that will come from our budget?
Yes. So the big one in terms of cost, well, the big two, the second one is an Ohio initiative. That's us having a say at the table as to how that looks. I do not think that will be an additional cost. We already have money allocated to SNAP ENT programs. We may have to redesign the outcomes for that.
Do we know the cost?
Pardon me?
Do we know the cost?
Of the ENT, I'd rather not off the top. I can certainly get that to you. Community workers, one of the reasons we're only doing 2 workers per site once a week is because we want to mitigate the cost. I want to make sure that I can say that one worker can probably complete 10 interviews during the day if they're working the contact center. So I don't want to do, if I see 20 people coming in, I've got 2 workers, then they're seeing about the same number of people they'd see in the contact center. I know that it's not taken away from our efforts to actually address the work, because the goal for that community worker piece is for us to actually be out there, be able to do the work in the community. And so it should be cost neutral. And we're never going to, we're not taking an entire staff and doing that. This is on a rotating basis. And then improved automation. We have money in the budget to look at automation, and we're trying to figure out, there's a few things that we can do internally and a few things that we're looking at potential contracts for.
Okay, last question. Community workers, first time that I've heard your department use that, just my first time hearing it. Are those considered the eligibility specialists?
They are the eligibility specialists, yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. President Jones, followed by Vice President Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to revisit again that conversation, the SNAP food stamp employment and training redesign at the state. Do you have a sense of what they're redesigning? Do you have a sense of how they're changing it?
So
expectations?
The mandate from the legislature is to make it more geared towards the employer community. Okay? And so the intent is, and recently they met with some representatives of the employer community, is what do you want? I think that the Job and Family Services Organization is responding to the legislature and how do we get this done? So this actually started, I want to say 6 weeks ago, and we've been meeting twice a week, and largely virtually, but meeting twice a week. Part of it is understanding what does that really mean, and how do we get that done. Some of the debate is on, I'll reference the ABOD population. The ABOD population traditionally has not been the population that the employer community wants working with them. Able-bodied adults without dependents who are currently on the SNAP program are often people who are facing other issues and significant hurdles to employment. There is, however, and we work closely with what we call a voluntary community of SNAP ENT participants who know that we educate them and tell them that there are employment and training programs available to you. If you want them, they're not required, but if you want them, they're there to you. And the voluntary population, I think, is what the employer community is interested in. We had some good conversations around that because what they have said, very boiled down to a simple statement, is we want people who are willing to work and we want people who want to be there. And unfortunately, when you say work required, thinking of that ABOP population, we're forcing you to show up. That's not the population that the employers are looking for. They're looking for the people who want to be there. And we've had some success with the voluntary program here.
Right, Director Gowan, who are the employers that they're training for, or industries, if that's however you characterize it? The ones that they want to train these able-bodied individuals for, is it like Cleveland Clinic? Is it something else? Who?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So they're redesigning it to meet the needs of the employers. You want to train these SNAP recipients, benefit recipients, to be trained to get employment with the employers. Who are the employers? I'm trying to get a snapshot picture of who, so I get a sense of what you're training them to do. Are you training them to be phlebotomists, or training them? What are the industries that are being trained to fill?
So I think I may be able to answer the question. If I don't, just please redirect me. So our approach has been, we've worked closely in designing what we do with the Seattle Jobs Initiative, who's had really great success in modeling SNAP-T programs to work with the community. And so one of the goals that we've pursued is to increase the number of workforce providers out there. We were up to as high as 9 providers that we were able to refer people to, and so that we can go to a SNAP recipient who voluntarily wants to take part in a program and say, what are you interested in? Or if you're interested in healthcare, we have 2 or 3 providers that focus on the healthcare community. If you're interested in manufacturing, we have 2 or 3 providers there. If you're interested in IT, that's an interesting question. Yeah, so
You did.
that's what we do, and I think that they're headed in that direction. And a lot of it for us, we have actually a workforce provider community that can cater to that. And so do Franklin County, Hamilton County. The rural counties are going to struggle with that because they just don't have the provider community.
I got you. So with that, my question is, the able-bodied individuals, as you mentioned, some of them just aren't at that level of what some employers may not be looking for. They have barriers. My belief over the last 12 years, those with those barriers, sometimes they're actually ideal as self-employed individuals, someone who could go into business for themselves. Do you train someone to simply go into business for themselves? Do you show them how to do the things necessary to be self-employed, file the appropriate taxes, those things, and then they would remain eligible for SNAP?
So the blunt answer is no, because what I hear when you ask that question is, are we training people to be entrepreneurs?
Entrepreneurs, thank you.
And that's not part of the program, and it's not been, to the vast majority of the sessions that I've been, that's not been part of the conversation at the state level. It's interesting, I can take that back.
That's my last question, because this goes back to something I asked a good 10, 12 years ago. I was under the belief that it was one of the eligible categories. An able-bodied individual who was genuinely an entrepreneur, had business for themselves, they actually met that requirement. And I was under that belief about 10 years ago. If you could verify that for me, I'd like to know.
Yeah, so I'm going to make sure I'm understanding questions. So able-bodied adults, that category of people that who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs.
Well, let's just say they are. They have a business, a legitimate business. I was under the belief that was actually one of the eligible requirements to be a recipient.
So the biggest, it's all about income eligibility, and then after that is the work requirement piece. And if I think I understand the question, one of the biggest concerns is if you want to get them in order for them to continue to receive their SNAP and be part of the program, they'll have a minimum number of hours to participate in. And I can see a program like that being difficult to meet the state requirements around that. I'd have to look back and get back to you on that.
So we'll leave it there. Let's follow up later.
Okay.
Vice President Stevens.
I am concerned because one of, in my district, is the food bank. And for at least 4 years now, they've tried to help us or our joint constituents who are in need of food. And as you know, the numbers are incredibly depressing, that more than 400,000 more families needed food from the food bank than ever before. Now, that includes area outside of Cuyahoga County, but that means that since we're the largest proportional piece of that 5-county area that they serve, that means that a majority of those people were residents of this county. And one of the things they believe is that if we had a social worker or, and what's the new term that's being bandied about?
Our workers are eligibility specialists.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you. If we had one placed there, that they could help reduce the number of people who say they're waiting to get benefits. Where are we with this kind of assistance of our partners so that they can help us reduce? How many families did you say were waiting for decisions and needed coaching and assistance? Was it some number like 3,000?
Just now, 5,600 SNAP applications, but we receive 8,000 a month. So, I mean, that's high, but it's not incredibly high for us.
We've been receiving a large number since they first started tinkering with the program. Was that 6 years ago?
I started 5 years ago.
So they were
very close.
They were playing with it when you came on board, and the same with me. So I'm continue to learn things I didn't know about the eligibility and who gets kicked off and who remains eligible. Can we have a shortage of people we're hiring, a shortage of people we keep? How do we get to filling positions like this that help us make the direct connection with families?
So I want to make sure that I understand. And you referenced your work with the food bank, correct? So we do meet with the food bank every month because they are our strongest partner on the community in addressing hunger in the county, and we work through them on a lot of issues. We have a direct line for them and some case referrals, and we did offer for them to be part of our pilot program, and they're in the midst of a significant expansion.
Yeah, I've just walked through on Thursday.
Yeah. I'm going to the ribbon cutting November 1st, so very excited. I did see the place 2 or 3 weeks ago, and so they did not feel that they could embrace that and bring a couple workers on for 1 day a week back then. And I think much to their dismay, they just couldn't do it because they're in the midst of expanding.
Do we have the ability to provide them with someone?
So we are in talks with them. I actually meet with them tomorrow again.
Okay.
So to kind of looking at expanding that community workers out to the food bank as well.
Okay. So it's on your to-do list, at least to
It's
explore?
on my, yes, oh yes.
Because I'm like, well, I don't have anything to do with staffing. But I can ask. Funny that you should bring this up because I think that's who's coming before us at the first budget hearing.
Yeah. And I meet regularly with Tiffany, who's the head of their outreach team.
Right.
And she's always at our monthly meetings. And
Right.
she gave me the tour of their new facility.
Okay.
And yeah, so we're in those
you are
conversations.
going to have a conversation with Tiffany about what needs to be done to potentially have someone there 1 to 2 days a week, or what was the preliminary conversation?
I mean, our original, and I apologize, I'm wandering from the microphone here. That was our original, but that was a pilot to see how well it worked, see how many people truly came in, how many people we were serving. The food bank just wasn't able to do it at that time. And so what that finally will look like, I don't know. I think I'll find out more tomorrow.
My thought is that if we have capacity and they turn the corner, we can provide them with someone. It is not just them not having space for us, for the county to send somebody to occupy and be helpful.
Yeah, in their new facility, they will have space.
Right.
And it's not a question of capacity for us.
So, okay, because there was some misunderstanding. For some reason, I thought we weren't capable of giving them what they needed once they got the new space.
Okay. I don't know what to say to that.
Okay,
We've
so
been in
I
active
must have
conversations with them, and,
misunderstood.
yeah.
I must have misunderstood, because I knew that there was no space for us in the old space, because there wasn't space for any, people were sitting on top of each other.
So I should clarify, this whole conversation really started, well, about 4 months ago. So if you're talking about previous conversations, that may have been different, but I'm talking about conversations that started about 4
Okay.
months ago.
Well, I'm delighted to hear that we have additional capacity that we can help them with, because I was thinking we were someplace else. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Director, what's the starting pay and the minimum qualifications for a caseworker?
What is that? I'm sorry, Councilman.
What is the starting pay and the minimum qualifications for a caseworker?
The starting pay for a eligibility specialist right now is $19.41 per hour. And qualifications are an associate's degree, as well as, I believe and this is where I may have to get back to you, but at least 2 to 3 years of customer service experience, and experience in benefits or community work. But I'll have to, the associate's degree, I'm positive of. Some of the other stuff I'll have to get back to you on.
So is an eligibility specialist and a community worker the same thing? Or?
I'm referring, yes, an eligibility specialist. We are not creating a new position. We are sending our eligibility specialists out to these.
Okay. And what's the target staffing level for that position?
It depends on, so the pilot program, we haven't seen 20 clients per day. We did see 20 clients in one day at one of the centers. That was last week. We've been averaging, it was a slow rollout start, but we've been averaging anywhere between 11 and 15 clients coming to visit us. And that's with being just at each one of those centers 1 day a week with 2 workers. That appears to cover those. The food bank would be different because the food bank is very directly tied to people trying to address hunger. So I think the food bank will be different. It's going to grow, and I couldn't speak to how many workers that we'll have devoted to this right now.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back at 2:45. The Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole 2024 to 25 biennial budget hearings will please come back to order. And the next item on the agenda, as Director Merriman said, Director Tiffany Dobbins-Brazelton is not able to be with us this afternoon, and speaking on her behalf will be Jeffrey Bloom, the Deputy Director of Child Support Services.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of council. My name is Jeff Bloom, Deputy Director with the Office of Child Support Services. Tiffany Dobbins-Brazelton apologizes for not being able to attend today, but on her behalf, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present. The Office of Child Support Services helps families by establishing parentage, as well as establishing, maintaining, and enforcing support orders. This also includes locating parents and establishing and enforcing health insurance coverage as well. In Ohio, 1 in 3 children are involved in the child support program. Involvement of both parents in a child's life and consistent child support payments increases a child's likelihood of graduating high school, can lift children out of poverty, reduces spending on public benefits, and reduces the likelihood of a child's involvement in the juvenile justice or foster care systems. Child support payments assist with housing, childcare, education, food, transportation, clothing, and a number of other expenses. The Office of Child Support Services works to engage with both parents, guardians, employers to strengthen our services and link with community partners on a variety of needs. All right, this is just a high-level view of the Office of Child Support Services org chart for reference. Spend most of the time focusing here on services and highlights of the Office of Child Support Services. First 3 categories are actually our federal performance indicators and the primary services that we offer. In paternity establishment, that's establishing parentage. We serve over 140,000 children. And this past federal fiscal year, we established paternity on nearly 63,000 children who were born out of wedlock during the prior federal fiscal year. In support establishment, I want to acknowledge that we are the top performing metropolitan county in the state of Ohio for the last 3 years. And then finally, the last 2 categories is combined here, collection of current support as well as past due support. Last federal fiscal year, we collected over $200 million, and a majority of that money, an overwhelming majority of that money does go to families. The last piece I'd like to discuss here is outreach and initiatives. We do want to build relationships with a number of organizations in the community to increase understanding of child support. With community outreach, we attend in the neighborhood events and other community-based events as well. We attend pro bono clinics as well as some training with the Bar Association and Legal Aid Society. Annually, we put on an employer workshop to educate, help employers educate and understand our services, as a majority of the collections that we receive are from employers. I'd like to touch on a demonstration grant that we're currently participating in, a 5-year federal grant that's 100% federally funded, called Safe Access for Victims' Economic Security. It really touches on the intersection between domestic violence and child support. Final slide for content here. We're going to talk about our overall budget. So nearly half of our budget is in staffing, services and benefits. Contracts, I'll touch on that briefly. It's around 28% of our total budget. A majority of the contracts are with 3 entities that they've been longstanding contracts: Domestic Relations Court, Juvenile Court, and the Prosecutor's Office. They provide services to complete actions on child support cases that we cannot do administratively. And the last part, as far as funding sources, funded primarily through Title 4D reimbursement, federal, and then we have state and some HHS levy funds as well. So we'll keep it short and direct and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Are there any questions by my colleagues? The one question I would ask is whether the proposed budget for 2024 to 25 as submitted by the administration is sufficient to meet the operating needs of the division.
Yes.
It is, okay. Anything else? Hearing none, you get off easy today.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
For stepping in and presenting on behalf of the director.
Thank you for the time.
Okay. And finally, for today, we have the Division of Senior and Adult Services Director Natasha Petricola. Did I pronounce it somewhat close to correct?
You did, thank you. And I'm hoping I get off easy today as well. So. Thank you, everyone, for allowing me this opportunity to talk about the Division of Senior and Adult Services today. I stuck with the assignment, and I really just provided the numbers of the budget, which I think that you're all interested in hearing this afternoon. Just a little background. We are 168 full-time equivalent employees. We are a smaller agency, but we do a lot of work. I brought several of my teammates here that I work with and my colleagues in the different departments and divisions. I'm going to quickly kind of go over the particular areas of DSAS, and then I'll get into the numbers portion of this presentation. So we have our clinical programs, and in clinical programs, our deputy director, Darlene Wade, is here joining us as well this afternoon, and that's where our options program and home support program is housed. Our options program, as you've heard me talk about many times, provides services to those individuals who are older adults who do not qualify necessarily for Medicaid. They are not rich by any resource, but do require some assistance in the home to remain independent in the community. We do home-delivered meals, we do personal care, we do homemaking, we have a emergency response that we provide clients. We also have transportation contracts in that particular area, and we also have a laundry service that we embarked on because we were having a difficult time contracting with homemaking services. And we do some one-offs like grab bars and medical equipment to assist people, and we also have a chore program. The chief supervisor of that program, Cynthia Mason, is also joining us today. We have our home support division where we have our nurses. The nurses do a lot of the biometric type screenings, go into the homes of our clients. And right now we have approximately about 27 family service aides. We've had many leave us, we've had several retire, but if we were at capacity, we would have about 37 family service aides. We have our community programs. I'm still kind of the deputy director as well, serving over that particular area, but that's where you see our connection center, which is our intake department. We are on task to probably have another record number of year of individuals calling in, requesting services. Some of the top reasons that they're calling is they're looking for homemaking services and home health care. They are looking for food assistance. They are also calling for adult protective services. We have our Adult Protective Services program, which is the safety net for older adults who are suspected of being abused, neglected, self-neglecting, or being exploited that are 60 and older and residing in the community. And we have our Information Services program, which is an aging and disability resource center. So those individuals, the social service workers and program officers go out, they conduct benefit checkup screenings, they assist people with some emergency resources as far as connecting them to food pantries, providing them applications for other kinds of programming that they may be eligible for, but they're not aware of. Then we have our Office on Aging. Patricia Newell is our executive officer. She's also here with me today. Under there, we have our CSSP programs, which I'll talk a little bit about later. That's our community social service programs. There are 70 senior centers or senior servicing agencies throughout Cuyahoga County, and a lot of those people request funding from us to provide services to people that reside in their communities. That can range from digital literacy, transportation, adult daycare, adult development, congregate meals, home delivered meals. Daphne Kelker is here as well, and Daphne is kind of the person who keeps an eye and monitors all those contracts. It is also where our Livable Cuyahoga, our age-friendly initiative, is out of. And we also do our communications, our marketing programs. Those are all housed within the Office on Aging. So it's our outside resource, bringing in resources as well as providing the community information about what we do at the Division of Senior and Adult Services. We also have an advisory board. When we're fully at staff, we have 25 board members who come from different organizations that support common missions and themes that the Division of Senior and Adult Services is in tune with. And then we also have our advocacy coordinator who really keeps an eye on any kind of legislation that could impact the older adults and disabled adults we serve. Uh-oh. So I basically broke everything down to talk about our sources of funding. I talk about what we've received in the past from 2021, and then I have included what we're anticipating and receiving for 2024 and 2025. This was the budget most recently provided to us. This was given to us as recent as October 3rd. So this is what we are going to begin working off of. This is what we're anticipating receiving for those 2 years. As you can see, there's been gradual increases, but also in those increases, keep in mind that's cost of living, wages, and fringes, and those costs, how they are inflated at times, just to account for, the economy and everything that's going on. It's also showing that we are very heavily dependent upon the Health and Human Services levy, which I think many of you are already aware of. General fund, we do not receive dollars from there. And with our special revenue fund, you can see where we're receiving additional funding. Those are for some grants that we receive. That's from some additional funding and revenues that we bring in. This is our spending. Again, we've gradually increased our ability to spend on a variety of different kinds of programs. The majority of our budget, about 58%, is attributed to employee salaries. And then what we did is I broke down what our other expenses are, and then the staff count is at 168 currently, and that's what we anticipate, at least for the near future, it to be.
So, to my colleagues, I would share that the 2023 projection for the HHS levy subsidy is $23,770,000, and the 2024 recommended budget for the HHS levy subsidy is $25,900,000. So those would seem to be in reasonable relationship with a modest increase for the cost of living and a few additional services.
Yes. So outside of the obvious, a lot of our dollars are at least tied up in contracts. And I'm sure some of you have recently received some calls that I'm also aware of from providers who had seen some decreases in their budget. So I want to make sure that I make clear that when we base this on this, the awards, the money that was provided to our providers, that was based on what we projected at the time of the RFPs, money that we would be able to responsibly state we could provide those people that do business with DSAS. So we do know that there's been dollars additionally added to that, so this will be amended, but we put out the RFPs for CSSP in June, and we put out the RFPs for options in July. We wanted to be proactive. We wanted to curtail anybody having to wait for funding available to them beginning January 1st of 2024. So those are moving forward, but there will probably be additional funding given to these providers in 2024. We met just last week, and we felt that the responsible thing would be to have those dollars available to providers come the beginning of the year, and then we fix things after the fact. But we wanted people the ability to charge for the services that they're rendering for the people that they're servicing. So our CSSP contracts, I provided what our 2023 amounts were. I also included that there had been 33 providers for our CSSP contracts in 2023. In 2024, 2025, we will have 30 providers.
Is this for senior centers?
Some of it's for senior centers, some of it's for transportation. So the community social service programs is a mix of all those kind of things. Some are for congregate meals. But these are all agencies or entities in the community that some way outwardly face us as an agency and assist those people that we're seeing as clientele.
So for just senior centers, how does the 2024 number compare with the current number of providers?
Well, anyone who applied was given pretty much repeat, like senior centers that applied. I don't believe there was anyone that did not receive the funding. Like I said, we thought we'd have less money, so we did universally cut some people's budget. But we also based that on the RFPs that they submitted and the requests that they had for various programs.
And were there new senior centers?
There were.
How many?
So out of the CSSP contracts, we had seen that there were, I wrote it down. I had it here somewhere. And that's the sheet I don't have. So I believe that there were 4 CSSP providers that did not come back, and then we replaced that with 5 others that were new. And there were a variety of reasons. I reached out to one that I have a good relationship with, and she said that they had to work on some internal things before she felt comfortable applying. It wasn't a reflection of anything regarding the RFP process. She said it was just a matter of staffing. And we found that a lot of people have had issues with this. When there's money left on the table, it's often not because any of these centers want to leave these dollars here. They've had a difficult time finding staffing. One agency did not have cooks to help deliver the congregate meals. They're just not able to fill some of these positions, and it's creating shortfalls. Even with the options contracts, we've seen at least 2 home care agencies that we've worked with for years in the past go out of business, and they are no longer providing any home care. So there's been a huge hit, for a lack of a better term, in that industry just in general. But this is something that I think most of us are aware of. There's a lot of people who have not recovered from the pandemic, and they're just not able to attract the people that they need on staff to provide these services. A lot of the senior centers, they employ retired individuals. They have volunteers. Some people have chosen not to return to some of these centers. So I think that's some of what we're seeing with the difficulty of the agencies just finding staffing.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at our options contracts in 2023, we had about $4.8 million, and there were 23 providers there. And out of the options contracts, we saw an increase. We actually had 2 more providers that were in the RFP process, and we did consider to give dollars towards. And then we saw that we were basing it on a little over $4.7 million. But like I said, we have learned since then that some of these dollars will be replenished in both CSSP and options, and we will be working with those providers, many of them, to give them the contracted amount that they received in the past. Another contract that we have is our guardianship services contract. Right now, there is only one provider who does these services. It's through Lutheran Metropolitan Ministries. That contract is $605,285 per year. They help with all the indigent populations that we work with where a guardian is needed for an older adult, and that older adult does not have family or another person that's invested in their life that they can call upon to be their legal decision maker. And then we have our bed bug contracts. So those continue to be used very heavily, but there's $175,000 allocated, and that's split between two providers. We have one that we provide $105,000 towards, and they do more of the heat treatment, and then we have another provider that does the chemical treatments, and that's a $70,000 contract. So the infestation level is based upon which provider we use.
Question.
Sure.
Do any of these providers have the dogs to detect the bed bugs? Do you know?
I believe Terminex has used them in the past. So, but they do a very thorough assessment. They go out, they pull out carpeting and things like that. We do have some additional dollars. We do provide them if they have to remove furniture, mattresses, large rugs, things like that.
So, okay, thank you. And the guardianship is, so these are not the guardians appointed through a probate court action?
They are the guardians.
It's
through
both.
probate.
It's,
Yeah.
okay, it's
It
all
is-
through probate?
It's all, yeah, that's the court
Private
that.
cases? And,
Yes,
okay,
Adult
got it.
Protective Services works all through the civil courts, so it's all probate. That's where the guardianships are handled.
That's all of it? Okay.
And these are some of the things that we're kind of keep a close eye on. Obviously, expanding livable Cuyahoga. It's an initiative that, you know, we talked about at the inception of it when we first became an age-friendly county, and that was in April of 2022. We are in the second year of a 5-year process, which is the planning phase, and we're working with the consultants that are planning next. They're a Columbus-based firm that is having an advisory council, convening many community partners to talk about the various domains and how we can network and bridge gaps and work together. So I think that out of that, there'll be a lot of recommendations and a lot of things that give us some ideas about how we can further programming that we provide our older residents and disabled adults in Cuyahoga County. We know that there is going to be a demand in service and being able to meet the client needs. Our intake department, the Connection Center last year took about 23,000 calls. We're almost at that amount of calls that we've received. This was probably back in beginning of September. So we are very busy. We've seen increases in adult protective services and reports made. We've seen increases in options requests. So we are extremely busy, and we also feel that the calls we're receiving is kind of a barometer of what's going on in the community. Inflation is impacting a lot of older adults. They are not able to supplement their income. Their income is not growing at the same rate as possibly some other people. So we are very concerned how that's going to look in a few years, especially with our county aging, and that the prediction that we know there'll be at least 30% of our population in Cuyahoga County 60 and older by that time. The provider costs are increasing. We did build in a 5%, 6% raise to the rates that we were providing our providers. You have to keep in mind, though, the majority of our providers are smaller businesses. So they also have very little overhead, but they have also staffing needs they need to meet, and there's more and more individuals looking for help. If you look at transportation alone, just wear and tear on vehicles is very costly. Fuel costs, you know, with food has gone up as far as prices to provide the meal because it's not pre-pandemic standards at 2019. And then homemaking services continue to be a staffing challenge. So like I said, we are at a shortfall with how many aides we currently have. You know, when you pay somebody $16.60 an hour, but there are other places that they can work with a lot less stress. It is very difficult sometimes to work with somebody in the home environment. We have, human beings that we have to deal with. So I'm very concerned to see what ends up happening just in general across our state. We know it's a shortage that doesn't just impact our county, it impacts everyone across Ohio.
I have a question.
Sure.
So, Councilman Kelly is first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the director, I want to get back to the bed bug thing. How many calls do you think you'd have had in the last year, this year, for this type of service?
I'd have to get back to you on exact numbers because I didn't look at that before I came in here. It slowed down considerably, obviously, during the pandemic. So we had less home health aides, people like agencies going into the home. But as soon as things started to ease up and the vaccines became available, we saw a big increase in people calling for those services. There are guidelines for our services. You have to be 300% of federal poverty guidelines. We go into homes that are single-family homes, doubles, and some triple homes. Oftentimes, there has to be also an agreement that other people residing, if it is a duplex, that they allow the exterminators into their home to ensure that they're not the cause of the infestation. So we work towards getting the whole house remedied. But I don't see this going away. Actually, there's been more increase more recently, so I'm not sure what's going on, or is it just that people are more out and about and just the cross-contamination and just people also coming into homes. We have some seniors that really don't go out often. So for that to come into their home, are there children visiting, family, friends visiting? Is it a provider coming into the home and creating some of that infestation concern? We're not really sure. But we also know that when we don't provide this kind of service, it puts people at risk. There are providers that will not go out and see somebody if they know that there's a bed bug infestation.
Chair to the director. So there was a family in my district that had what would be really a mild infestation, which it grows quickly, I know at that point, but I was shocked at what they told me the cost was to have a company come out, and they did the heat, and they did the spraying, they did all of that. And not only is it expensive, but it takes an emotional toll on the family because this poor lady was a wreck, having to tear the whole house apart. And I mean, it was just a mess for them, and I felt so bad. But I would think that if you had too many calls, that $175,000 is not going to last long at that point.
I think we're okay for this year, but we'll have to see what happens maybe next year and kind of gauge at midpoint where we're at or after the first quarter of the year. But right now, we have enough funding that we are able to support, we think, till the end of the year what we need.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So to Councilman Kelly, you weren't here, so I'll just give you a little bit of the history that that Councilwoman Conwell started this program early in the new government. It was started as a pilot program at $25,000, and it's just kept growing and growing because it just addresses a real need that's out there and is prevalent. So, and speaking of Ms. Conwell, you are next.
Thank you.
Followed by Simon and Sweeney.
Through the chair to director, I have bed bug questions, but I'm going to go in the order that I have. Have DSAS payments to community partners, have they improved?
I think they have, definitely. We meet monthly, and we talk. It's all of us, so it's the finance department and people representing them as well as DCAP. So we meet monthly to ensure that things are done in a timely fashion. Some of it we've been also checking in more frequently with our providers because sometimes it's the providers not submitting also the invoices. But again, like I said, a lot of these are smaller agencies. They are very limited in staff. A lot of them are wearing multiple hats, so I don't want to criticize them. But a lot of our woes about paying sometimes timely had to do with just the money being available. And last year was kind of an odd situation. 2020 is much different than 2023. We are definitely on course. We check every month to see who's underspending, what's going on. If we haven't received an invoice, we do multiple trainings. There really is no excuse anymore for anyone's part not to be up to date. And we've also said there's a hard stop in December. You know, get your November invoices in, we'll get those paid out, and then December will be paid in January. We ran into that problem last year. So some of it was the contracts weren't all through the process that they needed to be in. It wasn't the money at the right place to be able to draw down. We paid almost $775,000 in 2023 of the 2022 contracts.
So that's good. And there's a pilot that is coming forth with the Office of Procurement. I'll probably make that announcement tomorrow at HHS in terms of community partners and really incentivizing those that do get their work or their invoices in on time. In terms of the bedbug program, has there been a request for an increase due to increased cost from the two providers?
There has not been.
Okay.
No.
And in smoke detectors in the carbon monoxide program for the visual and hearing impaired, where are we on that? Do we need any more?
That program has not been done since I've been in this position that I'm aware of.
Okay, so I'll have to follow back up with that because that's one of my babies too. Second year of the 5-year in the expansion of the Livable Cuyahoga Initiative. Is any dollars needed when you approach year 3 and 4?
There may be some dollars that are needed, but at the moment, we're going to see what the outcome is of all the stuff that we're working on right now. Really, ideally, we're trying to just fill in the gaps with providers that can assume some of those roles. I think one of the biggest problems that we do face as an agency at times is not knowing the resources out there. So I'm hopeful that we can work a lot with these partners and bring them to the table when we see a need and see what services they offer and make those available to those that we're helping right now.
So can you provide us, me and Dale, estimates when you get closer to that time?
They'll have the final report done probably end of November, beginning of December, and we're thinking that we'll release all the information about what comes out of that beginning of 2024.
And through the director, through the chair to the director, are there any additional services needed that we don't currently fund? You spoke a little earlier that the need for senior population is going up, and I know pretty much the services we provide for already. Are there any other outliers that you're seeing?
Right now, no. But again, home care is really something we are concerned with. There are not enough providers out there. And even agencies that you used to never struggle, like a program, say, for example, Passport, they're even having issues finding providers for clients who are on waiver programs and Medicaid. So I think it's a bigger issue than a lot of people want to give credit to. But if we can't recruit STNAs and family service aides and these home health aides to go into the community, it kind of defeats the purpose of what our mission is, and that's to keep people independent and residing in their homes as long as possible.
Red Cross used to be a agency that had classes for STNAs. Are there any partnerships with them? And
Not necessarily with them, but like Tri-C also has trainings that they do. There's many avenues. I just don't think there's a market for people who are going into this field as much as maybe in the past.
Okay. Well, we got to change that around.
Yes, we do.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Councilwoman Simon, followed by Sweeney.
Yeah, I think that was my question. It's not only money because of the shortage of staff, it's a broader issue of people even wanting to engage in that field. Is that
I believe it is, yeah.
That was the question.
Just can't compete. I mean, salaries just if you look at the state of Ohio, and we're pretty generous. We offer travel reimbursements, we provide uniforms, you know, they work a set schedule. Our family service aides know the clients they're going to see. They work Monday through Friday. There's a few critical care people that might be seen on the weekend. But for the most part, people have a set schedule. And working in a nursing home, it's a lot different. And working at a community agency is very different. So we try to sell people on that perk, and it used to work. But it's not working as well anymore.
Why not?
I think we're competing with, I think somebody mentioned Amazon. You can start at $18 an hour, right? And there's bonuses. You can go to some fast food restaurants. And when you go, you do your shift, you come home and you're done. But going into people's homes and caring for people, not all our clients are in the best moods. Our clients have different restrictions. They're going into a variety of home environments. Some are cleaner than other homes. I just think, I think it takes a certain heart and a certain kind of person to want to give back in that way. And I think that it's not happening.
Yeah, this is the great restructuring after COVID. This is part of the shift, and people don't want to do that work, even if it's $25 an hour, I bet. I don't know. It's terrible. It's hard work.
It is hard work.
It's hard work.
You can get injured shifting somebody, you know, that doesn't ambulate. I mean, we take precautions, but there are definitely, there are hazards to doing this type of work as well, right? So.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Councilman Sweeney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director, nice seeing you. You didn't get off easy, so
Not too bad.
it was
so
a good
far.
try. Just another reflection and some questions. Watching you get sworn in and your excitement and your pleasant demeanor, and watching it where it's at right now, it's pleasant, but you're the director, and you're embracing it. And you mentioned your staffs here. Can you just introduce them so they can wave their hands so I get the eyes? No,
Pat?
each one.
Newell, Patricia Newell, she's our executive officer. Stand up. You can
I say, name and a face, thank you. Oh, that's a good queen.
Darlene Wade, she's our other deputy director.
Hello, Darlene.
Cynthia stepped out. Cynthia Mason, who's the.
We know Cynthia.
Oh, there she is. She moved. And then last but not least is Daphne Bender.
So thank you very much. Just want to recognize them coming down and the work that they do. With the contracts, the CSSP, you mentioned that, this is me hearing it, there was 33 providers. You lost one and got 5. Is that what you said?
What did I say?
And then it
Lost
says
4, added 5.
lost 4, added 5. From 33?
I wrote that down somewhere. I don't know where it is.
But then you said we'll have 30 in 2025, so that math
We will
doesn't.
have in 2024 and 2025, 30 providers.
And you
So
lost.
we had 33.
Yes.
And then out of that 33, we lost a group of them, but then we earned some back. So that's what made up for the difference.
Yeah, so just my simple math is 33, lost 4, and gained 5. So if you lost 4, you'd have 29, and then you gained
No,
5, you'd have
these are the
30.
right numbers. There were 33 providers, and we will have 30 now that
Yeah, so
apply.
just
Yeah.
that plus 4
Yeah.
and plus 5 is not,
Yeah.
there's some math problem there. Okay, and just with the bed bugs, it's kind of ironic, or just difficult. We have a separate line item for bed bugs. And with Councilwoman Conwell, 25, it's woefully underfunded because Cuyahoga County's big. And my question, the partnership you have with the city of Cleveland, because when I was there, I helped create the Department of Aging with Jane Fumick. So you partner with them to talk about?
So a lot of times, some of the people would not qualify because of the income guidelines with the city of Cleveland. So they would come through the Cuyahoga County Division of Senior and Adult Services and get those services. So the income threshold was lower for the city, and ours is a little higher, so we could qualify more people. I believe that their program had been on a hiatus. I am
Oh,
not
really?
sure, yeah, so I'd have to check with Mary to see whether or not they're back in the business of doing that. But for all intents and purposes, I heard that at one point they weren't providing services, but I can check into that and let you know for sure.
I'll check into.
Okay.
Because it's, as Councilman Kelly said, once it's part of in your house, it just devastates you on many different levels.
Absolutely.
And with I mean, there's a lot of people in Cuyahoga County, and a lot of, the $100-some thousand is, I don't think, you say you're good, but how do you advertise for that, and how do you advertise for the other stuff, all the wonderful stuff? That's two questions in one.
So basically, if somebody calls looking for bedbug services, they may have reached United Way first or somebody else, 211, and then they get basically provided our number because we let our providers know and our community partners that we provide a bedbug program. And we'll go out, we'll talk about it, and we say what the guidelines are for that particular program, and then that's how the calls get solicited. And a lot of the calls are handled through information services. And that, like I said, is kind of the safety net. But also we have people that we go out into their homes and then we learn that they have a bed bug issue. So Adult Protective Services may go to the home for a different reason altogether and realize there's a bed bug issue. We have home health aides that go out into the homes and they can tell whether or not a client has contracted bed bugs. And then we would put in a request to get the house exterminated for those purposes. So options is another one. We may have a provider that says we can't transport somebody any longer for medical appointments or to a senior center because we know that they have bed bugs on their person or they've created issues at a particular center or at the doctor's office. So those are some of the means and ways that we come across these people needing assistance.
And thank you. And through the chair, it's a balance between notifying everybody, we have all these services, and balancing the resources that you have. And on that point is not just the bed bugs, but all the other wonderful services you provide. What's your outreach? Do you have an outreach budget, and how do you do that?
Not necessarily. We have some dollars that we use for marketing and communications, producing literature, collateral information. We go to a lot of resource fairs in the community. We go to different cities, not just the city of Cleveland, but all the outer and inner ring suburbs. So we're out in the community quite often. Anytime there's an event and it's something we can participate in, we go to senior centers, the senior centers.
I'm not.
Yeah, we convene those meetings, so the senior centers are very aware of some of the services we offer. A lot of word of mouth. We have an Adult Protective Services Collaborative where we do some updates about programming and services that is relevant. That particular collaborative reaches so many different kinds of individuals. They have the people in the hospital setting because every hospital network pretty much joins those collaborative meetings. We have attorneys, legal aid sits there.
No, you're all good. I'm just trying to promote all the wonderful things you do.
Sure, thank you.
I'm not condemning or criticizing at all. It's just trying to say this is good. And through the chair, how do you, with your staff at all these senior centers, is that extra work? Who goes out to these things?
Well, we convene a lot of the meetings now since the COVID pandemic virtually. So we host those meetings every month.
Got it, okay.
So everyone's invited to join. We do a variety of Daphne goes out and we'll do audits. Pat went out and did introductions when she first joined the agency and was introducing themselves herself to all the different agencies. They asked for us to come speak. Like a lot of times it's very specific. They want a presentation on Adult Protective Services, things that they should report. How do they report? We work with the hospital networks. I mean, we have very good relationships. The thing is, sometimes it's the relationship building that is most key, that people recognize the agency that they can go to for support or help. Money is very important as well, but I think sometimes you can do some creative things without necessarily having the funding. Now, there's other areas that's not the case, but I think that we've forged, and I think with Livable Cuyahoga will solidify a reputation out there that we do good work, that we care, and we house APS. We're one of the largest, if not the largest, adult protective services program in the state, and we pride ourselves on that. And we investigate a lot of cases that some other counties would not even dream about opening, but we want to ensure that the people coming in and the reports made, we go out there and ensure that the allegations are either alleviated, or if there's just a connection that needs to be made, I mean, we pass that baton and give those people an opportunity to get services elsewhere if that's what they require.
And absolutely, through the chair, you should be applauded for the work that you do. And I'll go with the chairman. Does your budget satisfy what you want to do and what you
Now,
need?
who would ever say they have enough money? But
I like that answer. You can leave it right there.
no, we are, I think we're okay where we're at the moment. But I think that there's open, hopefully, discussion if things do change, and we can go and talk about those things. Plus, we want to be innovative. We're not afraid to pursue grants if that's something we need to do. We've talked about it. We're just kind of slim on the staffing right now, but hopefully once I get replaced officially, that'll free up my time to actually
But
be
your
a director.
spot's not filled yet.
No.
That's
But
important one.
soon, very soon.
Good. I applaud you. Keep up the good work and let me know if I can help.
All right,
Thank you,
thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
So, Director, regarding the options program, is there a wait list currently, or are you caught up on applications?
There is a wait list for homemaking only,
And how many are on the wait list?
close to 400.
What would it take to fix that problem? Is it a problem of money, or is it that there's not enough providers out there?
Providers out
Not
there.
enough
No.
providers. Okay.
Like I said, we've lost 2 providers since the pandemic that went out of business that were pretty reliable providers in the past. They just can't find staffing.
And regarding adult protective services, how many do you have on staff for that program, and how many people did you see last year, and what's the distribution of different kind of cases?
So we have currently 30 social service workers. Our staff lateral over from mostly Jackie's outfit. So we really haven't had a crisis about getting staff. It's part of the collective bargaining agreement that they have an opportunity to lateral over to DSAS if there's an opening, and it's based on seniority. So we have 30 staff, 5 supervisors. Average caseload, I'd say, is about 18. When we hit about 25 to 28, we start calling in the worker with the supervisor and kind of doing a check-in to see what's going on. The average length for an APS case is probably about 60 to 90 days. But we have some messy cases where there's a lot of court involvement going back and forth, medical assessments that need to be done. So that's why some of those cases are a little bit open longer. What we did is we created a behavioral health unit because we've seen an increase of what were once younger individuals with mental illness or substance abuse issues and concerns only grow older and still need some help and services. Plus, during the pandemic, there wasn't an ability to get people a geriatric assessment in order to see whether or not they had capacity concerns. So we worked on an arrangement with Cleveland Clinic that one of the nurses would go out and we would do teleassessments. And so she would go out and set up the laptop, and then the doctor would be on the other end, and then she would do a bunch of different things prior to the appointment, just checking out the home environment. We do a depression screening, we do a falls inventory, and we hired 3 additional staff recently this year to assist her with those things. And they're all licensed social workers. They are people that we hired outside of the county. Well, at least 2 of the workers were outside of the county. They each have a forte. One has worked with hospice, so she's very versed about end-of-life kind of decisions. Another person worked in the hospital in the emergency department. She knows the lingo, and the other person has worked, she actually was in California and worked with the homeless for years there, so.
So what percentage of cases are neglect by a care person? What percentage are self-neglect? What percentage are abuse? What percentage are financial taking advantage of? What percentage are hoarders? What do you have?
So last year, we had probably about 2,300 unduplicated cases. About 43% of those were self-neglect. After self-neglect, the highest allegation was probably neglect. There are also some that have dual allegations that were both substantiated. Exploitation hovers around 23%. And actually, the least amount of cases that we see are the abuse cases. But I also think they're grossly underreported. We also have a lot of our clients that are residing alone. And predominantly, like I said, we see self-neglect called in.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else from anyone? Councilman Sweeney.
I just like how she refers to as clients. That's just refreshing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much, Director. That concludes today's hearing. The next hearing will be on Monday at 1 o'clock, where we will do the rest of the Health and Human Services agencies.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
For the record, I would just like to state that Councilmember Stevens is in attendance.
Okay. And any miscellaneous business? Hearing none. We are adjourned.